Velkommen til Lydverket. I kveld skal det ene og alene handle om et band som i 35 år har strukket og tøyd navnet sitt til det ytterste som en kommersiell salgsvare. Men til tross for mye utenom en musikalsk føss, så står bandet i 2008 fortsatt fjellstøtt på platåskoene.
Hey, we're Kiss. Big fucking deal.
Jeg elsker Kiss.
This is a phenomenon because bands make music and phenomenon impact society.
You ain't out, kiss the bride.
Part of the culture, bigger than music.
Glamorisert historie om Kiss, tenker jeg. Det jo laget dokumentarer om Kiss før, og alle disse veldig sånn glamoriserte. Det virker som Kiss har kjøpt seg litt inn på skjermen hos VH1, MTV og andre. Jeg har en litt sånn ironisk distanse til bandet. Jeg har fulgt det så lenge, og som journalist så har jeg hatt liksom en litt annet blikk på det. Så jeg ønsker å fortelle noe annet. Jeg ønsker å fortelle en sannhet, altså bringe sannheten frem her. Og den kontrastfylt, det den.
Hva det vi får servert i kveld?
Vi får møte rett og slett Kiss, snakke med dem. Vi får møte de som var de viktigste samarbeidspartnerne deres, managere, produsenter og sånne ting. Og vi har liksom på en måte prøvd å liksom få lirka ut litt mer enn det de andre har gjort, eller man har fått før, da, absolutt.
Du ikke redd for å knuse noen illusjoner og få fansfrendene dine mot deg, da?
Nei, sannheten må alltid få lov å vinne frem og tale, så det skal jeg tåle.
Ja, og Kiss-fan eller ei, nå det bare å lene seg tilbake. De neste 45 minuttene får du altså ei av rockens mest særegne historier, fortalt av de som har skapt den, og den nærmeste kretsen rundt den.
En katt, en månemann, en djevel og en stjerne. En lett gjenkjennelig logo og en lang rekke hits. Rocken vil aldri vært den samme uten Kiss, både som fenomen og som guder for generasjoner av fans.
Musikken godt gjennomført. Gode tekster.
Jeg synes det fælt. Ja, jeg synes det fælt, altså.
Året var 1980. Jeg var 7 år, og som de fleste 7-åringer var jeg lett mottagelig for det som var tøft, litt farlig og skummelt. Det var i denne perioden barneplaten med Smurfene og Trond-Viggo ble lagt til side for science fiction-helter som Darth Vader og Superman. Og ja, jeg visste jo at disse superheltene ikke var ekte. Allerede første skoledag skulle jeg bli eksponert for noen nye superhelter, skapninger som skulle få en helt spesiell betydning for meg. På oppslagstavla i klasserommet hang det et bilde. Et bilde av 4 skikkelser tøffere og kulere enn noe jeg noen gang hadde sett. Og når jeg ble klar over at det ikke var skuespillere i en film, men levende vesener som faktisk levde i USA og som reiste rundt i verden og spilte tungrock, da var begeistringen total. Disse superheltene var ekte. De blåste flammer, de spyttet blod, de knuste gitarer, og de kunne fly. Det var mange som meg som mer enn noe annet var opptatt av Kiss og myten rundt bandet. For nesten en hel generasjon norske barn og ungdom så var Kiss guder, ja rockeguder. For meg var alt som glitret gull, og i Kiss sin verden var alt perfekt. Som en beskyttet 7-åring var jeg helt ukjent med en verden bestående av grådighet, kynisme, sex og rusmidler. Nå nesten 30 år senere ser historien ganske så annerledes ut. Åstedet New York, året 1973. 4 unge rockemusikere med en drøm om å oppnå verdensherredømme finner hverandre. Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley og Pete Chris deler en visjon om å gjøre noe annerledes, noe oppsiktsvekkende, noe som skiller dem fra mengden.
In the morning I raise my head and I'm thinking of days gone by. And the thing I want out of life is
Kiss was formed as the band that we never saw on stage. Every band looks the same. You get up on stage and you have your t-shirts or your jeans or your leather, or there's a look. We wanted to create something that was timeless and that was bigger than any one of us.
I was just this chubby little unpopular kid from, Queens, New York, and I wanted to be a rock star. I had a great dream of what I wanted to do. So you have to not only dream something, you have to roll up your sleeves and make it happen.
I took a hand, baby, this is what I said.
I wasn't going to be a manager in the sense of a manager behind a desk because I was a director-producer. So I wanted to do a show. But when I went to see Kiss, they were kind of doing a show. They had the theatrics, you could tell they wanted to really perform. And more importantly, they had the determination to make it. They wanted to be rock and roll stars, probably more than any artist I've ever met.
I remember Bill Aucoin standing on the side of the stage. He and I were standing together and we watched this show and I went, wow, what is this? I've never seen anything like it, and I was very impressed. The show was magnificent. I thought that, wow, these guys got the makeup on and the boots and the whole bit, and I thought, wow, this is spectacular. This is a show.
They were young, they were fresh, you could tell they wanted it desperately. Peter and Ace were right on, it was great.
I was not impressed with the musicianship except for one person, that was Ace. Ace was great. He was a terrific, terrific guitar player, and he was good. The rest of the band was a little shaky, to say the least.
Gene had a queer vision, and Paul had a queer vision of doing a rock band, but something bigger than the average rock band. There was no doubt that Kiss using that extreme point of view and creating like a super Beatles of the...
Made sense. The Kiss name, the logo, the makeup, and the sound of the music. It was something that was different and a little bit unique for the time.
There was a time of creating and inventing Kiss, and then it was really a matter of creating or recreating or inventing ourselves, not only as a band, but as individuals.
Basically, Gene, who liked monster magazines, became the monster, and Paul always wanted to be a rock star, so that's where that came from, and Peter loved cats, so that's where that came from, and Ace loved anything to do with space, the planets, rockets, and everything, so that made sense. So that's how the transition came.
The four of us made those characters. Even though each one of us was instrumental in coming up with our own, none of us could have done it without the others.
Their characters were perfect. You couldn't ask for better characters than that.
We wanted to do things that no one had ever done before. And I remember asking him, I said, look at guys, here's an idea. I'm not sure you want to do this, but I think suppose no one saw you without your makeup. Oh yeah, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. Well, it was a lot harder for them than it was for me. I mean, I could try to keep people away from them, but they constantly had to hide behind that makeup or behind a mask or something.
Once the band was together, there were four people to share in that challenge.
We all came up with ideas. We each designed our own makeup. I designed the logo. It was a group effort. It was a lot of fun.
Most people didn't think they were good enough musicians, that their songwriting was okay but could be better. What were they doing with the makeup? Rock and roll didn't have makeup. So we had a lot of things that a lot of people and a lot of interviewers, a lot of press, as well as record company execs just thought it just couldn't be done.
Now, Bill Aucoin definitely bought their vision, okay? And he had a credit card, American Express.
Kiss. Neil had Casablanca Records, but there wasn't any money behind.
I løpet av en toårsperiode turnerer Kiss land og strand i USA. Samtidig gir de ut 3 studioalbum. Sakte, men sikkert kommer flere og flere fans til, men det er som konsertband Kiss omfavnes. Platene selger beskjedent, og inntektene spiller ikke på lag med utgiftene.
We were almost at the end of our rope, and I didn't have any money. The record label didn't have any money. I had gone through all my money to develop Kiss, and so we were all broke. We had a hard time eating day to day. In fact, the reason that we did the live album, Kiss Alive, was because we couldn't afford to hire a producer to go into the studio. So Neil finally said, look, I guess we can afford to do a live album. At least we can do it quickly.
Then I got a phone call from the president of the company one day, and he said, there's a Neil Bow guy. He says, listen, Kiss, you want to do a Kiss album, a live album? All right, I'm going to do it. And the reason I chose to do Kiss was what a challenge. They can't play straight. They're out of tune. They're out of time. How the hell are you going to make these guys sound good on tape? So that was my challenge.
We were a band that was growing in terms of our reputation as a big show, but we had virtually no album sales. I remember asking our manager if we might sell 250,000 albums. And he said, you know, let's not expect too much.
The album Alive Alive in '75 actually sold about 3.5 million. Now, in those days, to sell 3.5 million would be like selling 10 or 12 million today. That's how much of a difference it was.
We went from selling very few albums to, you know, platinum, double platinum, triple platinum, and on and on and on.
So it was really significant in the industry and really kind of set Kiss up as a major group. But even so, a radio still wouldn't play Kiss, mostly because of the makeup.
You know, that was a special album because it was a signature of our live performance. And it was the album that really elevated us to the superstar status.
I likhet med mange andre Kiss-fans, så var det det visuelle ved bandet som først fanget min oppmerksomhet. Jeg var solgt før jeg hadde hørt en eneste tone musikk. At den enkle og fengende rocken også levde opp til det visuelle uttrykket, var en uslåelig kombinasjon. Kiss var alt. Star Wars og Rolling Stones i en og samme pakke. Science fiction og rockmusikk. Ja, for lenge handlet det også om musikk.
I knew that
and I saw the power of really very basic rock and roll. And then when I heard the Destroyer record, I was very impressed. Well, they had a great producer, Bob Ezrin. I loved Detroit Rock City. I thought that was a great song. So then I had a lot of respect for them suddenly.
We had a blast in the studio, and it was hard because, you know, keeping everybody in time. I used to sit next to Peter Criss with a pile of cardboard boxes and a drumstick, and because there was no click in those days, and he wouldn't listen to a click anyway, and he would watch me, and I would hit this cardboard box so he wouldn't hear it, and he would watch my snare beat. As time went on, they became better players, and they were able to play in time and in tune as they got more and more experience. And actually, very good musicians.
Selv om Kiss har levert flere klassiske rockehits gjennom tidene, så har bandet flere ganger hørt litt for mye på plateselskapenes ønsker og latt seg forføre av ideen om å nå ut til et enda større publikum.
record company kept saying, you know, if you do something with a dance beat, we'll sell millions more and it'll get even bigger. Well, I don't think anyone was happy about doing I Was Made for Loving You. We did something that the record label wanted us to do, and then it turned into a hit, but it wasn't really Kiss. Gene and Paul loved all the women that would come in, but it also, a lot of the Kiss fans had left because they had started to change away from the leather and the heaviness that they used to be.
Girl, I was made for you. I was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me, and I can't get enough.
Kiss har vært kraftig med de kommersielle kreftene. På deres vei mot verdensherredømme var ikke salg av album og konsertbilletter nok. Kiss var det første rockebandet som virkelig så verdien av samleeffekter, og mer enn noe annet band så var Kiss med sine tegneseriekarakterer skapt for et slikt marked.
This is Kiss, each sold separately, and you can put them in any crazy pose you want.
Kiss defies logic because we have 3,000 products. Everything from Kiss Visa cards to Kiss comic books, Kiss condoms, anything you can imagine. And a lot of those things don't have music. You just get our faces.
It was really like cartoon heroes. It was just a natural to do it. But it really was branding them. You know, it's kind of when you have a new product, you brand it so people know what it is, and anything to do with that product that you like, that name that you like, you kind of trust in a way. And on the merchandising side, I had worked like for years and years to protect them, to protect the logo, to protect their faces. And in fact, it took me 4 years to get their faces copywritten in the Library of Congress.
Merchandise? Why not? If it's a sin to give the fans many different products, then guilty. I'm guilty.
Vi kjøper. Vi dumme? Kanskje. Det verdt det? Ja! Ja, dette har jeg da kjøpt til August, som min sønn på 4 år, og dette en tannbørste, elektrisk sådan, som spiller rock'n'roll all night på Kiss i 2 minutter. Fordi det jo 2 minutter du skal pusse tennene hver dag for å unngå karies og andre bakterielle infeksjoner.
So about 50% of all the money Kiss has ever made has been in merchandise.
The Stones may be the biggest band in the world right now. The Stones or U2, you know, they're both very big bands. They can sell tickets, but nothing else. I don't want to dress up like Charlie Watts. I don't want to read Rolling Stones comic books. I don't want to name my child Ron Wood. You know, it's a band. It's a musical band.
If other bands are too boring to have merchandise, that's really not our problem. You know, when people say, oh, you're such geniuses because you have all this merchandise. No, we listen to the fans. What would be the point in putting out merchandise that nobody wants? We don't put out merchandise because we want to put it out. We put it out because the fans want it out.
De lager ikke ny musikk lenger, og de tjener sine penger på konserter og merchandise, men man må bare på en måte forholde seg til det, og vi lettlurte, og vi går med på det.
Veldig lettere å øse ut med nye merchandise.
Vi betaler det koster.
Välkomna till Kiss The Exhibition. Här har vi en monter med lite blandade saker. Det finns bland annat guld och platinaskivor. Det finns Paul Stanleys jacka ifrån 1989. Här har vi lite gamla leksaker, de gamla klassiska Kiss Barbie-dockorna från mitten av 70-talet, slutet av 70-talet. On Tour Game och Kiss Your Face Makeup Kit. Lunchboxen är en gammal klassisk sak. Cornflakes-paketet från Australien 1980. Lite blandade Kiss-pussel har vi här också. Jag har hållit på och samlat i över 20 år och mycket av de här personliga tillhörigheterna har jag köpt från Kiss auktion som de hade 2000 där mycket av prylarna kom ut på marknaden. Här har vi Eric Carrs kavaj från Europaturnén 1984.
Han använde den privat vid sidan om scenen när de var ute och turnerade. Paul Stanleys sönderslagna gitarr från Köpenhamnsspelningen 1980. Och vi har Paul Stanleys brandhjälm, Firehouse-hjälm från Creatures of the Night-turnén. Vi har även Gene Simmons yxbas. Det är ju inte han som har använt den, men det är ju exakt likadan som han har. Så den är ju signerad av honom och handnumrerad även av honom. Här har vi det berömda Kiss-flipperspelet som kom 1979. Och det är ju många Kiss-fans dröm att ha detta.
Kiss visste å selge seg selv for oppmerksomhet, og noen PR-stunt var drøyere enn andre.
I came up with an idea that we'd put Kiss blood in a comic book. And we're playing Madison Square Gardens, and I actually got a nurse and a doctor to come in to take blood. And the guy said, and the Kiss said, oh, you're not really, that's only a story. I said, no, we're going to get real blood. What? So they all had to sit, and we took a vial of blood from each one of them. And after, when we went to print the comic book was printed in Buffalo, New York, where all the printing presses were that printed Marvel comic books. So what happened is we took photographers, we went up, and each one took their vial of blood and poured it into the red ink. The problem was that the presses were set up to do Sports Illustrated. They weren't set up to...
Ultimata grejen ha. Faktum är att den gamla Pantera-gitarristen Dimebag, han dog ju för några år sedan och han blev begravd i just en Kiss-kista. Ja, varför inte bli begravd i den? Jag menar, varför inte? Jag menar, det vore det ultimata.
Kiss var blitt så mye mer enn et rockeband, og bandets fokus var ikke lenger først og fremst på musikk, men å forvalte merkevaren sin for mer oppmerksomhet og størst mulig utbytte. Dette påvirket bandets dømmekraft. Storproduksjon av samleobjekter var ikke nok. Stormannsgalskapen hadde for lengst inntatt Kiss-leiren.
Gruppen dere så og hørte er mektig populær. Den heter som filmen Kiss og ligger jevnt i toppskiktet på platebarometerne. Vi formoder at det er de yngre årsklassene som er glade i Kiss, og det er da også de menneskene som går på kino, ikke de eldre. I filmen om Kiss er ikke akkurat den dramatiske historien særlig nedtyngende, grøss og gru vil nok mange si.
We got a call from Hanna-Barbera who had done cartoons, and they had just made a deal with NBC to do, I think, 4 or 6 specials. And so they figured that maybe one of the specials could be Kiss, because Kiss had the comic book, Hanna-Barbera, and it would be a good idea, and they'd do some sort of a movie about Kiss. Gene loved the idea. Paul kind of liked it, wasn't quite as excited as Gene, and Peter and Ace hated it.
We were told that we were going to make a movie that was going to combine Hard Day's Night and Star Wars. Sounds good to me.
We did the script over and over again. We finally came up with a script that we liked. And don't forget, they had never done anything like this before, so it was really tough on them. You know, when you're doing a movie, you shoot 2 or 3 minutes, and then you sit for 5 hours while the next scene is being set up and lit and everything else. You know, they'd get there, and they'd be in makeup at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they wouldn't shoot their first scene till 12. Well, by the end of the day, they were beside themselves.
We were young. We knew nothing. We certainly knew nothing about acting.
Easy, Catman. They are serious.
And they've got guns.
Part of the problem with Phantom was that they really didn't want to spend the money doing it. They brought a director in that really didn't care. If they got the lines out, that was good enough. It didn't make any difference if it made sense or if they looked awkward. That's it. They got the lines out, next scene.
No gratitude need be voiced. Your mind speaks to us.
You're looking for someone, but it's not Kiss.
You know, we wound up making a movie that even while we were making it, we thought it wasn't very good. And Bill was there going, oh, it's great, it's great. And we're kind of going, okay.
So effectively, it turned out not to be what we really wanted it to be.
It's funny to look back on it, and it's funny to watch now. What doesn't destroy you makes you stronger. I'm glad I did the movie, for whatever reason, you know.
I 1980 var Kiss farsme og grådighet.
It's actually called music business. So are you businessmen or musicians? Actually, you're correct. The answer is yes. Well, everybody, when they pick up a guitar, does it to become rich and famous.
It was always about women. It was always about the band. It was always about music. It was also about getting paid for what we do.
I remember we went from not having a penny to the first check that I got in was for $2 million. Well, $2 million is a lot of money. And I remember just staring at the zeros. I'd never seen so many zeros on a check, you know, but that's, you know. So it went from almost nothing to everything.
You really like my limousine. You like the way the wheels roll. You like my 7-inch leather heels. And going to all of
1978, KISS grossed about $119 million, which in those days was almost part of the Fortune 500 companies. Fortune 500 companies today are doing billions of dollars, but in those days, for someone to do over $100 million was considered a major, major company.
I read a book about a guy called Chris Lent, which worked with you. And in that book, I think he used the word ruthless businessman, and that you were very controlling.
Yeah.
What's your comment?
He's right.
They've always been cynical. For Gene and Paul, respect is money. And how much money do you make, and how much money do you have? I think once you get ripped off of your first million, you become pretty cynical, you know. And by the time I got involved, they already saw money go that they should have had. And it happened again while I was with them, which is why they got probably more difficult with the business as time went on.
So you learned the business and took control?
You have to, or it controls you.
No one can sign a check from the KISS organization without, like, one of their signatures, even if it's a $50 check.
The fact that at the end of the day, this is business, of course it's business. I work my ass off. I work very hard. I love what I do, but when you are successful, you're generating money. If the money's not going in my pocket, it's going in somebody else's. It's not going in anybody else's pocket if I'm here.
Creatively, it almost stopped for a while. You know, we would spend hours talking about the show and about the music and how we could make it better and coming up with new ideas. When there was a lot of money, it all changed. We talked a little about the creative part and a lot about the money. So it became a little awkward.
If you're obsessed with how much money you can make, that becomes your focus. With the amount of things that Gene and Paul have done and licensed and merchandise, and I have to admit that I think they should be more musicians, but they don't see themselves that way. They see the band as something that they created and they owned and they're proud of it and they're going to make money from it every which way they can.
You like the credit cards and private planes. Money can really take you far. You like the hotels and fancy clothes and the sound of electric guitars.
People who will never get rich ask questions like, when is it enough? Because if you ever meet a rich person, they never say, when is it enough? Only people who have small dreams and small visions that can't imagine endlessness.
The stories that you see on television about the band that now works in a gas station, or, you know, the guys who now are making hamburgers, that's a shame, but it's their fault.
Life should be about striving. If you're the fastest human being in the world and you run the mile faster than anybody, when the cameras go away and the girls stop kissing you and they take away your trophy, the next day in the morning, you should get up and try to break your record and go faster. While you're alive, you must try to do more. If you ever meet anybody who says, I don't want all the money in the world, if I have enough, that's good, you give them my name, because any dollar you don't want, send to me.
Medlemmer. Det originale KISS var oppløst. Da populariteten til Kiss begynte å dale på begynnelsen av 80-tallet, valgte bandet å sjokkere verden ved å ta av sminken og vise seg umaskert for første gang. Et bevisst grep for å skape ny blest rundt bandet.
When Creatures of the Night came out, I thought it was a great album. I think it was better than Lick It Up. But Lick It Up, as soon as we took off the makeup, sold 4 times as many copies.
Umaskerte og visuelt likestilt med andre rockeband var det nye grep som måtte...
Well, I've never been high or drunk in my life. I've never smoked cigarettes.
If he could find the next woman to go to bed with, he'd be happy. You know, that was his drug. And Gene really basically was a sex addict. So Gene had his own problem, but it just didn't affect him like the problems that Ace and Peter had.
Okay, he slept with that one, he slept with that one. I know he slept with that one, he slept with that one. You know, and a few of them were like hitting on me, and I'm like, I don't think so. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, so that's who he is, and that's fine, that's what he wants to be, you know. Will Chamberlain did it in the basketball world, you know what I mean? You know, Magic Johnson too, before he caught AIDS, okay?
I was amazed 35 years ago that just because I was in Kiss, girls wanted to, I hope I can say the word fuck, me. Maybe it's because I was Kiss, maybe because I have a long tongue, or maybe because I'm just devastatingly handsome and hung like a horse. I don't know which one it is, but something like that. But in either case, I couldn't believe in the first year I could get laid every day, as many times as I wanted to. Girls would hop in bed with me and never ask me to learn their name, what they're interested in or anything else. But if I wasn't in Kiss, do you have a good sense of humor? I don't do it on the first date. What restaurant are we going to? How much do you love me? Did you buy me a present? All those things that make you want to kill yourself. But just because I'm in the band, I don't have to learn their name.
It's like, you, come here, and then a bodyguard comes over. Gene wants you in his room later, room 1212. Boom, boom, bang, bang, goodbye. Okay, okay, how many shirts did we sell? You know, I mean, I understood it. I used to see the girl coming out of the room going like, what happened? You know, well, you tell me. I wasn't in there, you know. He's realized his dream, Gene, you know. He wants it all, and he wants it now, and he generally gets it, you know.
The Polaroid collection, what is it?
It's like if you see a flying saucer land, you want to take a picture of it because you never know if it's ever going to come back. Or like a tourist. If you go to the Acropolis, why wouldn't you want to take a photo of it? It's magic. So I started taking photos of the girls. And there are a lot of them, about 4,800.
Gene has his Polaroid collection of all the girls he has been with. Do you collect some kind of souvenirs to tell you where you've been and with whom?
I didn't even know Polaroid still makes film. I didn't know that.
Did you see his collection?
No. No, I haven't.
I mean, I don't think Gene has gone to bed with quite as many women as he says. On the other hand, I think he enjoys that persona.
When Gene says certain things, he says it for effect, you know, to shock people.
I was at his house years ago, and I don't remember if I asked him about it or if he just brought it up and brought the books out. But anyways, he brought out some of his books and showed them to me. And it is what it is. I mean, that's Gene's hobby. Everyone, I collect watches. Gene collects pictures of the girls that he's had with conquests with. Okay.
...90-tallet igjen på dalende kurs. Grunge-bølgen hadde tatt over markedet til hardrockband som Kiss. I 1983 tok Kiss av sminken som en overlevelsesmanøver for å skape ny interesse rundt bandet. Nå var tiden kommet for å igjen benytte seg av gamle triks.
Gene, I'm telling you, you have to get the group back together again. Part of everything that it was, including the makeup, including the show, I think is the only way you're really going to make this happen again. And Gene and Paul would say, there is no way. We don't care. Peter and Ace are never coming back. We're never putting the makeup on again. And I'd keep saying, I don't know. It's bigger than what you think. And the merchandising, everything could come back again. No, Bill, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
You send your children to war to serve bastards and whores. So now you know you created me on the day that you were born.
Finally, there came a point where they really couldn't tour anymore, where promoters were saying, we're not going to pay you the money it's going to take to do a Kiss show. And that's when they did the Kiss conventions. When they did the conventions, they realized how much the fans really wanted to see the original Kiss. And out of those conventions came finally the realization that they wanted to come back together again.
There was a real desire for them to maybe kiss and make up, that there'd be big money there, But the MTV Unplugged thing was the catalyst. That was like kind of something that helped put them in the same room together.
We're talking about Peter, Chris, and Ace Frehley.
I didn't know, like the day of the MTV, that okay, this is the beginning of the end. But I wasn't too happy that they were going to be involved in that. But I realized MTV wanted to see that happen. Them playing some songs for the first time in so many years, and then of course all of us playing some songs.
So baby, please don't refuse. You know you got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose. I got nothing to lose. Oh no, you got nothing to lose.
So it made for quite an event, and one of the things I'm most proud of in Kiss, although it was my last real gig with the band.
I was told that we're doing a reunion with makeup and then told you're not in the band anymore. So that was not a good feeling, of course.
I'm very sad that there's such a huge line between Kiss with makeup and Kiss without makeup. It should all be one thing, but it isn't. All right? And it isn't because the makeup's worth money.
We started talking about ideas between Gene and Paul and myself, and it was like, it was a real fit because they their motto's like mine. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Today, aboard the aircraft carrier USS Intrepid, the immortal rock and roll band Kiss announced news that would shock the entire rock and roll world.
Ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Peter, Paul, Ace, and Gene. Kiss!
Everything you've heard about the Kiss years and the Kiss stage shows and the spectacle is true. It's not a legend. We're going to show every new band how the big boys do it.
It was almost like going back in time, playing the same songs and wearing the same costumes that I wore, back in the 70s. It was almost like time traveling.
And of course, you know how successful it was. It was majorly successful all over the world.
Siden gjenforeningen i 1996 har Gene Simmons og Paul Stanley holdt det gående som konsertband og storleverandør av samleeffekter. Ny musikk har ikke fansen fått på over 10 år. I tillegg har Ace Frehley og Pete Chris igjen forlatt bandet til fordel for nye medlemmer. Men denne gang iført originalmedlemmenes sminke og kostyme. Fansen har måttet svelge mange kameler på deres trofaste vei med bandet, men likevel har Kiss klart kunststykket å holde på tilhengerne, samtidig som en ny generasjon fans har kommet til.
Det skal sikkert noe til å greie å
se inn I en Kiss-fans hode og egentlig skjønne hva som foregår der. Kiss en greie som først og fremst visuelt appellerende, og det nok det som fanger oppmerksomheten først. Ellers musikken veldig lett mottagelig. Det party rock'n'roll. En fascinasjon som du tar med deg fra du gjerne en liten pjokk på 4-5 år og drar det med deg opp til dine voksne år. Og det henger det blitt en del av personligheten. Det en livsstil, rett og slett.
Everybody knows we have dedicated fans, but the Kiss Army is more than that. If you go outside, you'll see their bodies are tattooed with our faces. They dress up like us. They put on the makeup because they want to. You may not be in Kiss, but you can feel like it.
Sminken setter deg på en måte I en sinnstilstand, eller en plass I hodet og sjel der du får utfolde drømmer som du har hatt lenge.
Men dette på seg sminken nok litt av den der følelsen at du får bidra litt, eller du får ta del I den der magien som Kiss for meg.
I have the greatest fans in the world, you know. They're always there for me, they always support me, and I can't thank them enough, you know, for still being around after over 30 years.
We love you, Ace! He doesn't sign any guitars. My ass. All right. Hey! Vi har jobbat fett för den här, kan jag lova dig. Vi har jobbat fett för den här.
Der skal vi rett på tattoo-shop på. Dette blir jævlig bra. Nå var det omsider gjort. Fikk jeg han endelig. Jeg har drømt det I mange, mange år. Autografen til Ace Frehley på armen. Livgitaristen til Kiss.
Det Gene Simmons, denne. Det Eric Singer. Det Paul Stanley og det Tommy Faye. Det var det største jeg har sett.
Kiss-tatueringar är ganska vanliga egentligen, för att det är också det här lite grann med just med sminket och allt det, att det är väldigt, det passar väldigt bra till att tatuera in och göra så. Vi har ju ett antal här. Jag har ju Kiss Army, jag har hela bandet har tatuerat här. Det har aldrig varit några tveksamheter för mig. Det var ganska många år sedan jag skaffade de här tatueringarna och jag har aldrig ångrat mig liksom. Kiss är en sån viktig del I mitt liv så att det är inget konstigt för mig så.
There is something called blind adulation, where somebody just loves you no matter what you do. I've never found that to be the case with Kiss fans. When we do an album that they don't like, they don't buy it. When we have maybe not been in our best, they don't go along with it. So, you know, Kiss fans are incredibly devoted, but at the same time, they have their own ideas and expectations. Because Kiss is actually a way of thinking, a way of giving fans what they deserve, a way of presenting a show. It's a mindset and something you have in your heart. It's not us. It's not me. It's not anybody in this band.
Sometimes the name, the myth, what the band represents is even bigger than the four of them. I remember years ago, one of their conversations with one of the business people around them was like, Kiss can carry on without any of them. You know, I was like, what is it, Menudo? You know what I mean? That young band that you just replaced everybody in the band as they got too old to be in the band.
Someday maybe someone will replace Gene and he'll just be in the back, you know. Yeah, it's possible. You never know.
Yes, Kiss can continue without Gene and anybody else in the band.
Absolutely, there is somebody who can replace me. You know, somebody goes, oh, that's impossible. It's not impossible. For every great athlete, someone has come along and taken their place. I would consider it a great compliment.
So at some point will we see a Kiss idol like American Idol?
The answer is yes.
You got an idea for me now that you use?
Well, the deal has just been signed.
There is no signed deal. You know, it's, you know, again, it's when we're both asked the same question, sometimes you get different answers.
Yeah, what Gene pulls off or comes up with it wouldn't surprise me. And yeah, next thing you know, he's going to be selling, you know, toilet paper. I don't know.
Could you tell about it?
No.
Just a little bit?
It's coming soon.
Am I opposed to the idea of going out and trying to find, new KISS members through the television? Of course not.
In 20 years, I think there still will be some version of KISS. I would not be surprised. One thing I've learned about KISS is never say never. All things are possible. That's part of the attraction of KISS to the fans, because it's like dare to dream and your dreams may come true, and it came true for the members of KISS, and I think the fans relate to that.
KISS is bigger than any one of us, in the same way that if you take a photograph of KISS and take it to any country in the world, people will look and say, that's KISS. They may not know each member, but they know KISS. They know what KISS stands for, and that is timeless. That will be as important in 20 years as it is today. 20 years ago, it's something that can go on forever. I hope you'll be able to take your grandchildren to see a KISS show, and I hope they'll be able to take their grandchildren.
That I don't really believe, okay? But yet if there's KISS on Broadway, it won't be any of them, so yeah, it is possible, appearing tonight KISS. As Gene Simmons is, you know what I mean, as Paul Stanley is, and maybe we'll be all Norwegian people in the Norwegian production over here. NRK presents KISS Norway.
I believe that there is a way, and we are talking to people, and we're pretty close to getting it done, about finding the 4 new members of KISS.
Etter alle møtene med mennene bak rockemyten KISS journalisten I meg fornøyd. Jeg har avkledd bandet som enda mer kynisk enn jeg hadde trodd var mulig, og de ærlige innrømmelsene om hvor lite de I perioder har fokusert på musikken, kom som en overraskelse. Men som fan jeg faktisk ikke sjokkert. Å være KISS-fan en øvelse I livslangs selvbedrag. Et bedrag man kan leve med når illusjonen og underholdningsverdien så god. Jeg innser mer enn noensinne at KISS mestrer å lure fansen gang på gang. De sleipe selgere, og vi lettlurte kjøpere. På tross av at denne oppdagelsen tydeligere enn noen gang, så sitter jeg igjen med en følelse at jeg gjerne lar meg lure igjen og igjen.
KISS will continue for all time.
This will go on even after you're all dead.
Neste uke tar lydverket for seg de store spørsmålene I livet. Forholdet mellom religion og musikk.
There's universal human messages in there that anyone can get regardless of their beliefs or non-beliefs.
Hvorfor sverger noen av USAs største rappere til islam?
Islam isn't really a religion. Islam is a culture. You know what I'm saying? I live by the culture of Islam.
I believe I have a one-on-one relationship with God.
To the throne of Allah. It actually made me closer to Islam.
Det mulig ikke få sikret en mann dere visste var trua på livet?
Drapet på en norsk diplomat avdekker mistenkelige forbindelser.
Hva vil konsekvensene bli for fredsforhandlingene hvis vi får et nytt attentat?
Det verste scenarioet, det bygger kun på spekulasjon.
Det en skarp situasjon. Kodenavn Hunter, fredag på NRK1. Har du dårlig hukommelse? Ved hjelp av enkle metoder kan du nå bli et hukommelsesgeni.
Jeg har jo skjønt at det finnes faktisk veldig enkle teknikker.
Memoskolen I Schrødingers katt viser deg hvordan. Torsdag på NRK1.
Frp-politikeren Gøran Ask fortsatt savnet. Eva Høek skjønner at det verste har skjedd.
De tog fel.
Høek, torsdag på NRK1.